Hi everybody, this is Frank Connelly, Sustainability Director at Sanctuary Belize, and welcome to Sanctuary Key. Many developments in the world have their own beach club, many have their own marina. How many have their own island? This 5-acre jewel in the Sanctuary Belize Crown is an asset that we absolutely adore, love, and need to protect. And we're adopting the same philosophy of 3 bottom line economics: people, planet, profit, and making sure that this asset remains yours, not just for our own enjoyment right now, but for generations to come. A legacy in the making. How do we go about doing that? Well, one of the things that we do is very little. We rely on some of the natural security that we have here on the island by these guys, mangrove. Mangrove are absolutely critical to the stability of coastlines. And if you look the world over, the reliance that the world has on making sure that they protect their coastlines and how they go about doing that is becoming more and more important as the years go on. And these little guys actually serve a very critical function, so much so that organizations like USAID have put together entire manuals on how to go about propagating and actually planting and preserving mangrove all over the world. Let me give you a great example. Back when my company was doing development work overseas, we had one project that was post-tsunami Sri Lanka in the Maldives area. All those islands had obviously been affected by the tsunami. It was an absolute natural conflict that could not be avoided. But what was interesting in going out and actually looking at these islands firsthand was something that became immediately apparent. All the islands that had maintained these little guys, all these mangroves, had suffered far less damage. In fact, when we would go out to those islands, we noticed something. I mean, naturally, all the infrastructure, the structures that were on the island had been washed away. But more importantly, the real estate, the actual island itself remained intact. Why? Because these mangroves are custom designed by nature to absorb energy. Up to 70 to 80% of ocean energy is absorbed by these mangroves. It's the very same reason that we make sure that the mangroves within the Sapodilla Lagoon and the channel that goes into the marina are protected and enhanced by these little fellas. And how they form is pretty amazing. In juxtaposition, in the same project that we did in Sri Lanka, all the islands that had removed their mangrove in preference to things like gabons or seawalls. Those seawalls and gabons did not bear the brunt of the tsunami. In many cases, islands that were there to begin with had suddenly been scrubbed off the face of the map. The real estate was lost. In cases where you have mangrove, you're saving the actual island itself. It's nature's way. It is the way that this island that we're on right now has been able to survive for hundreds of years during its formation. The formation is what's the most interesting, and it's something that I want you to understand so that you understand the value of the island itself as well as the legacy that we're trying to promote and making sure that we can enjoy this island and that for generations to come, these mangrove and your family can enjoy it as well. It all starts from this guy. It's a mangrove seed. These guys will get about 5 or 6 inches long. They're called pencil seeds. And when they grow off of this during the seeding season, which is in about a month from now, maybe June, July, they drop into the Caribbean and they float about like little bobbers in the water, just kind of bobbing along as you go, and finally resting in an area where it can start its own island. Let me explain to you how that happens, as well as how it relates back to all the good things that we're doing back over at Sanctuary Belize and protecting our watershed and the city river water catchment. Okay, it all starts right here, out in this beautiful water. You see all these different colors out here. The lighter blues, the darker blues. The darker blues are the deeper channels, maybe 80 feet, 120 feet down to a sandy seabed. From that seabed grows coral. As the coral gets closer to the surface of the water, it starts creating these lighter colors. Basically, the sky sun is reflecting down into the water off the coral, back up, gives you different shades of blue. As it comes up closer to the water's edge, to the top surface of the water, a bulkhead, something amazing starts to happen. And you'll see it. You come out here to Sanctuary Key, take a little kayak. You'll see 3 or 4 little budding islands in the making, surrounded by beautiful, live, vibrant, juvenile reef systems. How many times have you gone anywhere in the world and you go and you take a dive and you see a mature or maybe declining reef system? We have some actual juvenile young nurseries for reef systems out here. And I'm going to explain to you how that happens and how it relates back to what we're doing at Sanctuary Belize to make sure that this island, 12 miles away from shore, is actually reaping the benefit of something very spectacular, which is the preservation of watershed. The watershed back at home at the Sanctuary Belize. The City River has a venting process. It goes through it every year. During the rainy season, it vents out a lot of siltation. It vents out a lot of things like coconut husks, bamboo, pieces of wood, you name it. It basically clears its congestion out of the river, out into the Caribbean. That is the food for coral reefs in the right quantities. Of course, if you're pushing too much siltation out, you basically are force feeding the coral reefs, and you see some of the bleaching that you see in many parts of the world, or that basically the coral reef has too much siltation and is unable to digest it and starts to die off. In a healthy, balanced system, 4 ecosystems over here, the 5th ecosystem right here, that siltation comes out into the Caribbean and is the food for the reef. As the reef grows, it builds up till it breaks the water's surface. A lot of times you'll see this is like a fan coral or a little bit of broken coral that finally breaks the surface. What that does is it's like a net, and it catches a lot of the debris. Let's take a coconut husk for an example. Coconut husk gets out there, floating around for a couple months, hangs up on a piece of fan coral that is broken up on one of these big bulkheads that comes up from 80, 90 feet from the bottom. And now you've got everything for a small garden. As soon as one of these mangrove goes into seed, the seed bobbing along for maybe months on end, finally sticks into that little piece of coral on that little piece of coconut husk, and now you have the beginning of a mangrove island. When you're on your way out here from Canatique or any of the destinations from the marina, you'll notice many, many, many small little mangrove islands, maybe the size of a coffee table. Those have started just like this guy started, from one seed on one piece of coral on one little piece of vegetable mass that it could root into, and starts into a small island. So if you want the boat to stop by, we'll put island lot number 1 on there. You can come back in 200 years. Your kids will love it. So that is basically how this beautiful 5-acre island formed, starting with one mangrove. And you go into the interior of the island, you'll see some of the more ancient mangrove that we have that have been preserved over time that show you the childhood of this island that has grown out. In the area that we're standing right now, this side, the north side, this mangrove is actually growing further out, creating more real estate, more beach for us in the future. So our next generations will actually have more island to come back with. This wouldn't be happening if we had a concrete seawall here. As a matter of fact, if we removed this mangrove and replaced it with a concrete seawall, we would be placing this vital asset, this gem in our crown, at risk. It's better to just leave it the way it is, and that is the plan of action for this island, is to keep it simple, keep it pure, keep it primitive, because it is more resilient that way than it is any other way. And as plants go, mangroves grow, by plant terms, at the speed of light. Every root that we see here is one more inch that it's taking and trying to create this island length north to south. Let's talk a little bit about the interior of the island now. Thanks so much. Okay, we've talked a little bit about the mangrove. Let's talk about the interior of the island. Here in the interior, we had a sand base just like you see here. And that basically made it so that when it rained, the rain would hit the sand, sun would come out, all that water transpiring right back up into the atmosphere. Very little potential for any kind of growth other than sand over a long, long period of time. So what did we do to improve that? Well, we took the coconut trees that we have on the north and the south end of the island, took their coconuts, allowed them to sprout, and voila. We've got 250 coconut trees here in the center of the island, ranging from about 5 feet up to about 7 or 8 feet, probably about a year old, maybe some of them are a year and a half old. By the time they're 3 to 5 years in age, they'll be creating shade. And while that's great for us because it'll make it more comfortable, the microclimate of the island will improve as far as the interior of the island being cooler. Also gives us plenty more space for hammocks, which we all love. But what it does is, more importantly, is actually creating a biodiversity. And we're seeing some of that actually happening now, even though these are juvenile coconut trees. When it rains now, it collects more water on the ground. A lot of it is being taken up and slowly released back out by these coconut trees. And we're seeing things like a little bit of algae, a little bit of moss. Once that moss takes hold, it gets cooked by the sun and actually creates micronutrients, basically trace amounts of soil. And from that, we're starting to see grasses and turfs. That basically is going to create a more lush interior of the island that would have not have otherwise been unless we're basically assisting or engaging in a little bit of biomimicry by creating a little bit more of a canopy within the interior of the island. But this interior is also critical to what we are actually going to be doing to making this a little bit more of a sustainable island. So let me explain to you how this works. Many of you have been on the tour. For those of you who have not, when we come out here on a day, we have a little bit of a picnic, we have barbecue, we obviously bring out a lot of beverages, ice, water, the blue bottles that we've all seen, and all of that has a footprint getting out here. Here's how we're going to change that paradigm for you, because owners who have this as an amenity are welcome to come out here, spend the day out here. We're going to make the experience better for you and better for the environment. Let me explain to you how that's going to work. First of all, back on the backside of the island here in the interior, we're going to have a 4 to 8 kilowatt solar system, basically a solar energy panel system with batteries, so that we'll be able to energize certain things like lighting, or back at the office, a little bit of small lighting, ability to charge up your cell phone, computers, those kind of things. That's all great and good, but guess what else we'll be able to do? We'll be able to put a NSF wastewater treatment system out here. And that's important for anybody that is interested in decentralized wastewater management. Every time you come out here, enjoy a Bellican beer, because I'll prove to you that you're not going to use your beer, you're just going to borrow your beer. Because when you're finished with it, you'll be able to use this wastewater system, engage in one of our restroom facilities where you'll be able to take in your liquid and solid assets, for a lack of a better word, and convert those into irrigation grade waters. Those irrigation grade waters will then accelerate the process of the growth of these coconut trees, and we may even be able to engage in some small farming, maybe a little bit of vegetables, maybe a few fruit trees. Just think about that. When you come out here, you'll know as a resident that you'll be able to get some fresh vegetables at your island, maybe some fresh fruit at your island. But it gets better than that, because once we have energy, and you look the world over, development is forestalled all over the world by something called energy poverty. Energy poverty is basically the limitations that are in development because you don't have a steady or reliable energy supply. By putting a 4 to 8 kilowatt solar package out here, we're going to also be able to run the pumps for the wastewater treatment, but also run the pumps for something spectacular, a 15,000 gallon rainwater collection system that we're having designed right now, and being designed by an architect from Costa Rica who's going to make this beautiful rainwater catchment facility. That rainwater catchment facility will do a couple of very nice things for amenities, as well as the ability to create our own drinking water. That's right. When you come out here and you're in your own boat, everybody that owns a boat knows, you start adding more weight, whether it be ice or water, any of those things, you're consuming more fuel and it's more costly to get out here. Think about this. You won't have to bring any of those blue bottles out to this island and figure out how you're going to manage that waste stream back off of this island. Because when you arrive here, we will have filtered, clean, beautiful rainwater from our own rainwater collector as your drinking water. Same thing with ice. We have some beautiful solar ice making machines that we'll have hooked up to our solar system that will create ice. So rather than hundreds of pounds of ice that you have to haul out here every week to have a nice barbecue and have ice in your drinks and keep your beverages cool, they'll be made here on the island. That means you don't have to haul them out here, and obviously you don't have to have as big of coolers that you have to be hauling back and forth. These may seem like small things, folks, but actually what it does is it creates a sustainable paradigm. It helps us live our values. It'll make this beautiful, primitive island what it should be, which is decidedly primitive, decidedly undeveloped, in a sense that you enjoy this island for what it is, a beautiful mangrove island in the middle of the Caribbean, where you can come, enjoy, spend the day with friends, laze around on a hammock, and then go home knowing that the next generation is going to be able to enjoy it as good as you did, or maybe even better. That's my job here at Sanctuary Belize as your sustainability director, and it's a pleasure. Thanks so much.